Hey folks, this is Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
You tornado Tony Panico.
And psychic contact with a red hot crystal ball.
It actually gets used this weekend.
Oh.
Yes, sir. Finally.
Yeah, it's...
I hope it's not cloudy.
yeah, we got some fights to talk about for once. We also have a guest coming on in about 15 minutes here, so we're going to kind of cycle quickly through the news, then we're going to get to her. Erin Toughill, MMA fighter and a boxer. She's done the boxing a little bit more recently, professionally, but also has a pretty decent career in mixed martial arts. And, little known fact probably, she was on American Gladiators. She was Steel on the show.
Ooh.
So, let's talk to her about all of that. And we'll have her on the show in a few minutes. But we got to talk about this fight card. Big one coming up in Jacksonville, Florida on Saturday night. And we got some interesting matchups here. We got some familiar faces. One of the first fights on the card, well, the first fight on the card, features a former guest of ours, Smiling Sam Alvey. 33-13, going up against Ryan Spann, who's 17-5. Yeah, we don't have any other former guests on the show, but we do have a guy who is from the same area I grew up in, Massachusetts there, Calvin Qatar. He's back in action, Boston guy. He's 20-4, and I used to communicate with him back in the early days of Fight News Unlimited, but not so much recently. He is fighting Jeremy Stevens, so this is kind of a battle of experience here. Stevens comes in at 28-17, Qatar 20-4, so that'll be an interesting one to watch. And the rest of the cards fairly entertaining, so it seems on paper anyway. We have the main event being Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. In the co-main event, Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Ferguson comes in at 25-3 in the main event. Justin Gaethje comes in at 21-2. Ferguson obviously has been waiting for his shot against Khabib. Never seems to materialize. Now he's got Gaethje in front of him. Used to be in the World Series of Fighting before they broke up and reinvented themselves. And he came into the UFC and just was in war after war after war. And this one proves to be yet another war. He's promising to knock Ferguson out. No surprise. But both of these guys have that slugfest factor. You know, they have no care for defense when it comes to trading punches in the middle of the cage. So if that gets into that kind of a fight, I do not see this going 4 rounds, never mind 5. I think this has,
I would agree,
within 3 rounds if it's a slugfest. If both of them decide to be tactical, yeah, I could go 5 rounds. But, it just depends on which guy shows up on both sides. Ferguson has had a very long layoff, though. So I don't anticipate him being reckless. I think he's going to be a little bit cautious. So I don't see anything happening until round 2, but I do think it's going to be a knockout, like I said. 2nd or 3rd round, and I do believe that it's going to be Gaethje that's going to get the edge. Even though I really like Ferguson, I think he's a good fighter. I think he is the least defensive of the two of them. He does have the better competition that he's faced.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
But that's really saying something.
But what's your prediction on that one, Tom?
Well, I slightly disagree with you, but it's very close. I mean, it would not surprise me if Gaethje pulls the upset. But right now, I think Tony's. I'm going with him slightly, but man, it's going to be a barn burner as long as it lasts.
I do like a little video I saw of Ferguson practicing his elbows on the posts of a weight bench. Not obviously hard enough to hurt anything, but just toughening up his elbows on a piece of metal. And then somebody had written in one of the comments, "Well, that's how he gets such sharp elbows." So I'm
Yeah,
guessing
and
he's
I'll
gonna
tell you
use
what,
him as one.
I think that even if Gaethje doesn't pull it off, I mean, his stock is still going to be high.
Yeah.
Regardless. So I was watching the Embedded, and like he was saying, he goes for it. He's all action, and he's come up short a few times. He's not afraid to come up short again, but he gets a good payday.
Yeah.
And all these guys that play it safe don't do quite as well. They're not in demand. So my heart's kind of with him. I mean, I like Ferguson too, but we'll see. I'm excited, and I'm even more excited about the co-main event because I'll be a spoiler on that. My crystal ball is saying upset.
Oh yeah. Well, what's
Yes.
the upset here though? Because both guys to me are.
Look at the odds. Look at the odds.
So
Well-
Henry Cejudo's the champion, so he's obviously the favorite.
Yes,
I mean, but Dominic Cruz, I mean,
yes, and it's
no slouch.
yeah, it's nothing against Henry. He's done everything he's supposed to do. I mean, the guy reminds me when I was a kid. There was this cartoon Mighty Mouse,
Yeah,
and he was the littlest thing, but God, he was so powerful. And
and
Henry
he beat the Mighty Mouse. Ha ha. Demetrius, that was his nickname.
Yes, and he's the one that beat him. Yeah, how about that? So it's nothing against him, but here's my reasoning on this. First off, Henry has moved up 10 pounds. Okay, that may not be that big of a deal, but he has not faced the best at that division. Now, he holds one over Dillashaw, but that was down at 125. Okay, so he hasn't faced the real cream of the crop at 135. Second, Dominic Cruz has this insane ability to come back from layoffs and just frustrate the hell out of his opponent.
Right.
And I just think he's going to do it again.
Yeah.
The odds makers would disagree with me, but you heard it here first. My crystal ball just
I
got
was
real bright
never
and said
really
upset.
amazed by Henry. I mean, he's got a great wrestling pedigree, of course. That's his main strength. But the power in his hands is nothing like Dominic Cruz's. And just the dynamic ability to use footwork and technique. I like Cruz.
Right.
Cejudo could win a wrestling match,
I
though,
believe
if he
that
can hold on to him. If he can hold on to him and keep taking him
styles
down.
make fights.
So it'll be interesting.
Mhm.
It'll be close, possibly,
Yeah.
but I think it'll be a decision for Cruz because he's just the smarter fighter over 5 rounds, and he can probably score.
He
a lot
always
more
has
points.
been. I mean, you just have to look at him in the past, and you have to see the stylistic matchup. And I think that Henry has to really push the action, and he's going to have trouble doing that against Cruz. He's at a reach disadvantage, he's at a lateral movement disadvantage, and Cruz just is able to impose his will. So,
Right.
tomorrow we'll see.
So we're in agreement there. And then we've got the big boys. Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And Rozenstruik probably most famous for the devastating knockout of Alistair Overeem with the 1 second left in the match. It was done. So that was just spectacular. But he was losing the fight. He was getting tossed around. He was getting gassed out. It looked like he was done. And then knockout win. So let's see if we can do the same thing against Ngannou. Ngannou's not very dynamic. He's not. He doesn't really press the action a lot. But you know, sometimes he's on fire. Sometimes he's lame. So we'll have to see. Exactly like the first fight of the night.
Well,
main event,
yeah, you know,
who shows up.
I have to go with Ngannou in that one because, I mean, he has looked like he's regained his old form. Now, whether his ground game is there, whether his cardio is there, we'll have to see. But in his last couple of fights, he has looked pretty good. And maybe that says a lot about Cain Velasquez having shot knees and, you know, as far as Junior Dos Santos just being goes through those wars with Cain. So that could be. But he's looked like the old Ngannou, and with
Rozenstruik.
Well, how do you pronounce his name, Rich?
Rozenstruik.
Sounds like he should be from Israel. He should be from Israel, not Africa.
Yeah. Jairzinho. I mean, that is a
But
weird first name.
he was so lethargic
Yeah.
in that Overeem fight, and to get back on one of your favorite teams, and I'm going to steal it from you. You didn't see much defense from him.
No.
He just, I mean, he was built up to be the second coming in this juggernaut, this dynamic force, and with 10 seconds left, but we're forgetting about the first the first 24 minutes and 50 seconds of the fight. Yeah. I didn't see it. I just wasn't that impressed. Now maybe I'm wrong.
Well, you got to also consider
Nagano
what did he learn from
had
that.
A strong chin.
Yeah. So I'd agree with that assessment for sure. We also have another heavyweight fight, and it could be Greg Hardy's first loss here. He's stepping up. He's got an undefeated fighter, Jorgen De Castro. Greg is 5-2. Not his first loss technically, but it'll be his first big main event card loss, I would say. Well, he's been in pretty much every main event, but anyway, he's 5-2. There's no word whether he's going to be allowed to use his inhaler this time, but we'll see. We'll see if he's the real deal or just hype machine. He's already also talking about getting into the wrestling ring, so who knows if he's got a real.
Oh, that's not a good sign. So that is really not a good sign. Oh boy! Wow.
And then we have sort of a loser-leave sound fight, even though these guys aren't that bad. Anthony Pettis against Donald Cerrone. Cerrone's on the downslide due to the loss to Conor McGregor there in just under a minute. Pettis is up and down all the time, but just can't seem to get consistent. So this is a good fight for both of them. Let's see who can make it a tune-up fight and who can start thinking about retirement after this one if they lose.
Yeah, you're right, because both of them, I think, are on the downside.
Yeah. Stock is going down.
You go back 5 years ago, Pettis. 5-6 years ago, Pettis could do it all, and I don't know what happened to him. And then with Cowboy, it's just the Cowboy's been around forever, and I think it's just the longevity is getting to him. So. We'll see. You're right about that. The loser, I think, is really going to have to look hard and decide what they want to do, and the winner can make one more run at it. See what happens.
And then we got Fabricio Verdum, 23-8 with one draw, fighting Alexei Olenek, 58-13, also with one draw. So lots of experience in that fight. Over 100 fights.
Fascinating. That'll be a fascinating round battle if that happens. Because Olenek's the man with that.
Almost 100 fights, I should say, not over. I'm not
special
very good
choke
math
he
whiz.
has. So this will be interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of heavyweights. They're putting up the heavyweights big time in this Jacksonville, Florida card. We also have a female fight. Carla Esparza, 15-6 versus Michelle Watterson, the karate hottie. She is 17-7. And then we got the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, Ronaldo Souza, 26-8 against Uriah Hall, who's 15-9. So there's a big-time veteran versus sort of still a newcomer to the UFC. He's been around a few years, but hasn't really cemented himself yet.
It was funny, Rick. The first time I ever saw the Karate Hottie was on an episode of Bully Beatdown.
Nice. Yeah.
Beat the shit out of this chick. It was kind of funny.
Bully Beatdown. They need that show to come back. Especially,
I love that.
It's gotten worse since that show was
That
out.
show was great.
Anyway, we got a couple more fights to mention here. Vicente Luque, 17-7 with one draw, fighting Nico Price, 14-3. And then Charles Rosa, 12-3, fighting Bryce Mitchell, who's undefeated at 12-0. And before we get Erin on here, I do have a couple little stories here. We got Mike Tyson, obviously, making the rounds, talking about coming back. There's a bunch of stories on him. First, $20 million offer has been made by Bareknuckle boxing people to get him to do that. He's also been offered over $1 million to fight. I think it's Billy Joe Saunders, or one of the Billy something. One of the rugby players turned boxers down there in the down under somewhere in New Zealand or Australia.
I don't think it would be Billy Joe Saunders. He's
Sonny
an
Joe
English guy,
Williams
and he's
or
only a
something
super
like that.
middleweight.
Sonny Williams, I don't know, some weird crazy name.
That would be a spectacle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, also Danny Williams. Danny Williams, I think, is talking about training for a possible matchup. And then today I read, of course, Evander Holyfield at 57. I did not realize he was that many years older than Tyson. But also thinks he can come back. So I'm sure they'll try to make that fight. Tyson versus Holyfield.
Well, like with Danny Williams was the second to last fight of Tyson's career. And that was a fight, Tyson had the loss to Lennox Lewis in 2002. Came back, knocked out Clifford Etienne in 2003. Fought Danny Williams. He was a heavy favorite. And he rocked Williams pretty good in the first round. Then he tore the meniscus in his knee. And when he went down to the floor, you could tell he was already gassed. He went down and he just stayed down. And then a few months later, he came back, fought Kevin McBride, and that's when he had the broken back, as he said. But like I said, that was, if Tyson's doing something and Holyfield, they're going to try to work something out there. I don't know if it'll be like an exhibition or a grudge match or a you bit my ear off, you son of a bitch match. So I don't know.
Well, here's the thing about an exhibition. Floyd Mayweather can do them because Floyd Mayweather's style is not a killer style. I mean, look what Mayweather make when he fought that Japanese kickboxer, something like $20 million for 3 rounds. For Mayweather, it would be acceptable. I don't think Tyson has a reverse gear. I don't know how he'd be in an exhibition.
Yeah.
Because a couple years ago, he had done that one thing with Corey T-Rex Sanders we were talking about last week, where they had the oversized gloves on and the headgear, and it was like sparring session. I'm thinking that's what it would have to be, something along those lines. But you're right, Tyson does not have a reverse gear, and if you get him in there, and especially if you put him in there with like a guy like Holyfield, both of those guys, pride's going to kick in, and it's ugly, and from anybody that has done boxing, you get in that, you're sparring, you're training with somebody, and especially Philly gym, or you're somewhere where maybe there was a little bit of bad blood previously, this guy might start picking it up. Well, you ain't picking it up on me now. I'm going to pick it back up on you, and next thing you know, it's 12th round, with the Blue Horizon, and you guys are, slugging it out.
Well, okay, now what do you mean by oversized gloves? Are you talking 16-ounce gloves?
Yeah, I think that's
we couldn't have those like giant cartoon or circus gloves.
Not like that. I'm talking about like sparring gloves, like 16 ounces.
And then what about headgear?
Well, when Mike Tyson did the thing with Corey Sanders back, I guess it was around 2005, maybe 2006. I don't know if he retired by then or not. I think he had. But they were using headgear. I'm going to look to see if I can find some clips of it.
Well, anyway, Tyson, they've been talking all about this little clip they've got of him hitting the mitts for like 5 seconds, and everybody's all over it, saying he looks like unbeatable already. He hasn't had a minute of sparring, as far as I know, recently, but he's supposedly ready. But it definitely looks like he's still got some of the magic. I mean, I can't complain. He definitely still looks good. But there's another story out this week that's kind of along the lines of another rivalry I wanted to talk about real quickly here before we get Erin on. The Mountain from HBO's Game of Thrones. He's also formerly known as Half-Thor Bjornsson. So he set a record this week, 1,104-pound deadlift.
I watched
and
that.
Made it look easy.
Incredible.
Made it look easy. Now he is going to fight the guy whose record he broke, Eddie Hall. I did not know this before. I saw that he was scheduled to make his boxing debut. And I actually saw a clip of him boxing, and he did not do very well for himself. He did not show good cardio. He didn't show good form. But, of course, that was probably years ago. I've also seen him screwing around with what's his name there? Conor McGregor over there in Ireland at his gym. And Conor didn't manhandle him, of course, but he got his pot shots in and was careful about it. But yeah, if this guy grabs a hold of you, God forbid, I don't know what you're going to do. But anyway, Eddie Hall was the guy who previously held this deadlift record. And so they were talking smack back and forth before the attempt. And they basically decided to fight each other because of this smack talk. And so now they've got contracts signed and everything. 7 figures, believe it or not. So they both got the same deal, and they're going to fight over a freaking weightlifting contest. Whoever would have thunk? But yeah, that's the mountain for you. And then a friend of the Fight News Unlimited show here, Gianluca De Caro. He's got an interesting story out today, or actually this week. It was put out on Tuesday, about a new version of BoxRec, boxranking.com. He wants it to be more accurate and more in tune to the real world of boxing, and it's some pretty interesting stuff. He said the purpose of box ranking is to provide 100% accurate records for matching of contests to prevent dangerously mismatched contests. It was created by David Pitoy following discussions with commissions worldwide over the lack of an easily accessible and, more importantly, accurate record-keeping website. There you have it. All right, let's get Erin on the call.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Hey, Rich, right?
Yep, Rich here, and we also have Tony the Tornado and Psychic Tom on the call.
What's up, Erin?
Oh, wow.
Good evening.
Guys. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So anyway,
What's going on?
just to get started here, just kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of your experience in combat sports.
God, let me try to put it in kind of quick. So I'm 42. I'll be 43 next month. I started training. Been an athlete my whole life. Soccer, basketball, everything. Softball. I think I started training when I was maybe 18. Just kickboxing. I grew up in LA, moved down to Orange County. Did jiu-jitsu, did all that stuff. Had my first professional fight in 99, 20 years ago. And all through that time, I retired for a long time because of personal reasons. But between 99 and 2009, I think, I had 26 or 27 professional fights. I did boxing and MMA at the same time. And then later on, I think I moved back to MMA. I focused on that. And then I came back after a 12-year layoff, and I actually had an original fight that would have been supposed to be on the Golden Boy MMA card, that one that Chuck and Vito did.
Right.
I don't know if you guys remember that. It was out here in California last year, but
Yep.
It was like one team versus the other team, and I was training. Antonio McKee is my MMA coach, so Chuck Liddell was training with us. Anyway, they tried to put me on the card. So we had like 8 women turn it down. No one wanted to fight me. And then I got an offer to do the boxing match that I ended up having. And I fought 3 times last year, and pretty interesting. So, and here I am now, I guess.
Cool. So the one question I always like to ask every fighter, who's your toughest opponent so far?
Mm-hmm.
And why?
I think my toughest MMA fight was probably my first fight. So this was in Aruba. We had, first of all, I was not anywhere even near ready to be fighting somebody like this that I ended up fighting. I got a draw.
but I hadn't been training long. I think I'd been training like 6 months or a year. Heath Herring fought on the card. Gilbert Eibel fought on the card. A lot of people who ended up becoming kind of like going to Pride and other places. I didn't know till I got there that it was one 15-minute round.
Oof. Ouch.
Which is fucking insane.
Yeah.
A 15-minute round.
Yeah.
And the men fought 30-minute rounds. So this was like when Valley Tudo, this was like real shit.
Yeah.
And the guy at the time, he was like, hey, you're a fighter. I'm only 21. You know what I mean? I'm like a kid, and I think I'm all fucking badass. But then they put me against a woman who back then, there wasn't, you wanted to find fight tape on somebody, you had to order a VHS tape.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? From like Black Belt Magazine or something, and pray to God that you could get some footage on somebody.
Yeah.
They didn't have it like that. So all we knew that she was, and she was a grown woman. She was, you know, I don't know, 37 years old at the time. And, she was, they had a couple of MMA fights, but she had like 40 kickboxing fights.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know any of that until I got there. So she was Dutch. You know, Aruba is a Dutch island, so
And
they had a lot of Dutch versus other people. And, you know, I'm sure I was supposed to get my ass whooped. It was like probably one of the hardest fights I've ever had in my life. And she was terrifying. I was terrified. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing over here?
Right.
You know? I just said, fuck it. Do it. And I got a draw on that one, and then the rest of it just, you know, I was like, I really enjoy this.
Right.
And it's
awesome. So what exactly was the
very scary at the same time, but very rewarding.
What exactly was the driving factor to get you into fighting in the first place?
So, reiterating that I was always an athlete, and I had a scholarship opportunity for a couple different places, but I mean, I was being scouted when I was like in junior high to play collegiate level. So I could have gotten a scholarship to Stanford. I preferred to party and drink. I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fighting all the time. I was just a fucking problem. And I preferred to do that. And so I got kicked out of, ridiculous. But I mean, I got kicked out of 5 different high schools in 3 years.
Ouch. I thought I was bad.
And then I've been on my own since I was 15 or 16. And then I moved down from LA down to here. And I had a lot of, you know, like most fighters, we all have a kind of similar story, like the real ones, the legit ones, where it's, you know, we're all angry and we have misplaced aggression and unchecked aggression and perceived slights. You know, I had a big chip on my shoulder, and I just remember LA Boxing, there was only one at the time. This is the original one, where like Sean McCulley came out of Jason Perillo, who you guys probably know has trained everyone in the UFC. And we had a lot of world champions that came out of there, so that was my original school. Sean McCulley was the owner.
Awesome.
And I just went in there I needed a cathartic outlet. I needed something to channel all my rage. I was really angry, you know, and that's why I was fighting a lot.
Right.
And it really evolved from there. I had no idea. So, like, if you're fighting back then in the late 90s or early 2000s or whatever, it's like, you know, there wasn't the platforms that they have today. It's like, people know I wasn't fighting to get on TV or get a movie deal or become a model. I didn't even know people were watching what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you fought back then because you loved it and you were crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we kind of did.
Well, back when we first started Fight News Unlimited, we used to actually interview tons of women fighters. And when I would go to the MMA fights, even in the early 2000s and mid-2000s, even locally, the girls that fought on the card produced the best fights. And I always said it was mostly, I think, because they were fighting for all womankind. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting to just show that women could fight.
Absolutely.
And the most incredible fights I was able to film some of them because, you know, it was back when they wouldn't forbid you from bringing a video camera into the fight.
Right.
And just some barn burners between the females. And I always appreciated the effort they put in, because when I was in high school, I wrestled on a team where the first woman in Massachusetts wrestled varsity on our team.
Wow.
And she wasn't, super good, but she beat a kid that year, and oh my God, the kid probably never lived it down. But she was a tough girl, and she went on to wrestle for Harvard as well. So great story, and that always stuck with me. Her determination, she never gave up. She tried to get a couple other kids, other girls, to come out for practice, and they never stuck it out for more than a week. But she did.
Yeah.
All 3 years that I did it, so it was just something to see.
Yeah, that's a grind. It's like, I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of people come and go, and certain people get involved for the wrong reasons, because it's cool and they want clout or they want a movie deal. That whatever, but you can't escape the grind and like the reality of like the training.
Yeah.
And it's it'll break you. It'll break you down, and it'll reveal who you really are and really what your intentions are. And those type of people won't last, because that's just not what they're about.
So I assume, like all of us other people who got into fighting because we were getting in trouble, it got you out of trouble, right? You're not still getting in trouble, are you?
Mm-hmm. No, it's been a while. And the irony is, when I work with a lot of kids that were like me,
right?
Kids that would go through the system or like juvenile hall, and that's a really important thing for them to understand, where it gives them again, a channel to direct all that stuff. And so, don't get me wrong, I have my moments. I'm human, but I have the ability now to, which I didn't possess when I was younger, to think before my actions. You know what I mean? And it takes a lot for me to, you see the stuff with the animals, that stuff is a huge thing for me. I give no fucks about it. I don't care who I throw under the bus. I don't care. I'm going to expose you. But if it comes to, getting in a fight or something, I mean, I'm not trying to die. It's like, unless my life is on the line, and I have to defend myself, all right, I will. But I pick my battles, and that's probably why I'm still here today, even though I put myself in many, many, many scary predicaments, in and out of this business. And, but yeah, I mean, going back to that, it's like, of course, it saved my life. It gave me the outlet and some passion, dedication, something to focus on, a goal, something bigger than myself.
Right.
And everyone needs a goal. You know what I mean? It's like you can't go through life with.
Yeah, for me, when I
you
grew
need
up,
a goal, a purpose.
When I grew up, it was the '80s, and the big thing was when you insulted somebody, they would come back with your mother. And my mother had died when I was very young. So, that would set me off. That would flip my switch. So that's how I got into realizing that, geez, I'm hurting people.
Yeah.
I need to channel this.
Trigger.
Just like you said. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to that story.
Absolutely.
But,
a
lot of us, it's like, again.
And guys, remember, I'm a Philly guy, where on the corner we were throwing, jabs and feints. And, slipping the hook, before we could even walk.
Yeah, well, my dad is from Philly. My dad went to St. Joe's. He's from South Philly. Like, I haven't been back there for a couple of years. I went back there. He passed a while ago as well, but we used to go there every summer to the East Coast. And, East Coast, Philly are a different breed of people. So,
where in South Philly? That's where I used to train.
I don't know. Oh, this is years ago. I mean, we were born out here, so I don't remember where my dad was born, like what street he lived on or anything, but he grew up very poor. Both his parents died when he was, 5 and 15. First person in his family to go to university. My dad had a pretty strongest man I ever knew, smartest man I ever knew, and my idol, my mentor, raised us. So.
Yep, the fathers of the world. You got to give them credit. Mine was just a perfect example of perseverance. He's dealt with a lot. He lost both of his parents too before he graduated high school, and his father a little bit after high school, but he never really knew his father, and I think that happens a lot with good fathers. They didn't know their father, so they become a good father.
Yes. So
they make sure their kids know them.
Yes. Absolutely.
But getting back to you,
I got a little
go ahead,
crazy. I was gonna say I got a little crazy link for you. Looking at your record, I see you fought on the card, which was Mike Tyson's last professional fight. We were just talking about Mike a short while ago, talking about his potential comeback now, at 50 years old. But Mike, when he first got out of prison in '95, his second fight was in Philadelphia, and he spent time in my South Philly gym. He set it up where he would have the gym when it was not open to the other fighters because it was a rec center. So he would get it all to himself for about 2 hours a day for a couple days. So I got to use some of his equipment that he left there.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that whole clip, of course, is going around where you see him. I mean, terrifying.
Yeah, he's in a weird place right now too. I saw him on his radio show, and he's kind of in a weird place. Like, he talked about that death would be easier than living a few weeks ago. He was saying that stuff. So I think
he's a trip. You know what I mean? He's been through a lot of shit.
Yeah,
he's been through a lot of shit and lost his kid. He's
he's an unbelievable character.
He's the most recognizable name in the world. You know what I mean? It's like it's got to make you question shit and whatever. He's seen it all. He probably doesn't give a fuck. He's like, whatever.
I love the quote he had about why he was doing it. He was like, I just want to help some drug-addicted motherfucker like me.
Yeah.
For the charity thing.
Absolutely. That's why he's, but I saw it was something like him and, what is it, Bareknuckle?
Bareknuckle, yeah. $20 million.
Whatever that one is, whatever the acronym, whatever the fucking acronym for that is. But it's, I saw a thing, so he was saying he wanted to do the exhibitions.
Yeah.
But they said that they would pay him. I just saw this literally, right before I got on the phone with you guys. But they were going to offer him $20 million, in his fight Shannon Briggs.
Oh, really? I didn't hear that. I know that Shannon was was pretty much trying to fight anybody who would share a camera with him.
I know.
As far as that
right. So it's like, he stalks everybody, and he's badass too.
Yeah, he is.
But give them a fight.
Other than the steroid problems, he's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, right. I think he's okay.
Yeah. But as far as the two sports, you've obviously seen both of them. Which one do you like better, if you could choose between the two? Boxing or MMA?
You know what? I go back and forth sometimes between which one I like as just an athlete. But to be honest, the communities, and I kind of, if you have not, you can be at a high level at the UFC and be the top of the top and whatever, but if you haven't been there or know nothing about boxing, it's not the same. It's a different beast. It's different people. It's different, because boxing, and it's very hard to articulate or explain to people. They don't know what A side is. They don't know what B side is. They don't understand the difference in the promotions. They don't understand. I get it. You know what I mean? Which is why so many people are disillusioned about it. And I know some amazing people in boxing. Don't get me wrong. I know some of the greatest, realest motherfuckers ever. But as it's very segregated still. It's very black with the blacks, Mexican with the Mexican. MMA is not like that. Our community, because I consider myself both, our community is very integrated. We all train with one another.
Cool.
And I feel like the MMA people are they're more real. I don't know how to, I I don't even know how to explain that exactly, but
yeah,
you go to a fight. You know, I was doing a lot of PPC shows last year.
MMA started out, like you said, you had to love it to compete in the beginning, and it's still to that extent for the smaller leagues. It's the very same way. Whereas boxing, a lot of people do it for the money because the money is better.
Right.
And you even see some of these female boxers nowadays moving over to MMA because the money is better for them.
Of course.
The males seem to do it in boxing because the money's better.
Look,
but for some reason, they don't want to pay the females as much.
I would be in MMA. I would be in MMA. It's like I didn't get the fight that first one. I've talked to Dana. I talked to him, I don't know, several times a month. They only have the 145. I remember this was even before I was considering fighting. He asked me to fight Cyborg a few years ago at the Honda Center because I live right down the street, and we could both sell a shit ton of tickets. And I'm like, give me, first of all, can I make 45? Yes, I've done it before one time because everyone said I fucking couldn't. But it's you know, and then you get older. Come on, it's not easy. If they did a 55, I called out Kayla Harrison, the judo chick. I've called her out probably 6 times because I can beat her, and I would get paid.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like we'd make a lot of money. The boxing that I did last year, the first girl, I went 0-3 last year. I should be 1-1-1. So Mari Cornejo, who I fucking whooped after a 12-year layoff, her, and she's alive. I just saw her yesterday. She came into Buddy McGirt's for some reason. We talked and we chatted a little bit, but she, her manager, her advisor, is one of the heads of the WBC. I knew I was B-side. I knew I had to knock her out to win. Even then, I could have still gotten a draw. Then the last girl I fought a year ago today, pretty close to that. She was on the Team USA. She had like 70 amateur fights, black chick, very slick. I sparred her before, and I'm like, none of these girls want to fight each other. And I'm like, fuck it, I'll fight you. I'm cool with her. We talked about it. We made it for a national title, and I think it was NABF or NABO. And she dropped me in the first round, dropped me in the 7th round. I got up, and then we only had one more round. I won a couple, and then she won the rest, but they stopped it. And then I fought on the Clarissa Shields card the end of last year, where I knew I was fucking B-side again, and I fought Hannah Rankin, and it was like, I'll box the shit out of her. She's garbage. And I still lost. You know, it could have been a draw on the very least. So, jumping around a bit, that's what I hate about boxing. But that's just fucking how it is. You know, but again, the community, I love those sports. I love boxing. That's why I train it every day. And I try to learn from the best, and I do. And then I get to share that knowledge with my clients. And again, I think the community is what I like more in MMA. If that makes sense.
Right. So, as far as your ultimate goal going forward, do you have any kind of plans what you want to do with boxing this year, or if you want to go back to MMA? Like, what's the hopeful plan?
Well, PFL, the only thing, you know, I could do PFL because it's 155 as well, which I would be much more comfortable making that weight. And I would just get, well, I don't have a career. My career is over. You know what I mean? I really came back because it's fun for me and I enjoy it. I'm too old to have a career. I already had my time.
Right.
And, you know, I messed up a lot of stuff in my career, which was why I retired.
So what would you say, looking back, is your greatest accomplishment?
Well,
in sports?
I'm still the only woman in the world to be ranked in the top 5 in both sports at the same time.
Awesome.
I'm a single world title challenger. I fought for like the 2nd women's WBC belt when I fought Layla. We fought for 2 world titles. I think I've had some really amazing opportunities that have come out of it, and I have a wonderful career as a boxing coach. I'm very well respected as a woman doing that. I mean, I'm very happy where I am right now, and that took a lot of time to create, you know, and because I originally, in 2009 or 10, I was signed to Strike Force. And at the 5th highest paying contract, male or female. And I had a pain pill addiction. And so those fights, the couple that I had before I got signed, they were on, for PFC, they were on like Indian reservation. They weren't drug testing. And if you look at my Wikipedia, you can see I pulled out of numerous fights. And I had every excuse in the book because I would have never passed the drug test. I was taking like 30 Norco a day.
Oh, yeah.
And so...
Yeah, we actually talked to Mark Coleman years ago about all that.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was on that documentary Smashing Machine with Mark
Everyone.
Kerr. And it wasn't like a rare thing back in those days. It's like everybody had to do it.
Well,
it was
and
that
it's
kind of
even
schedule.
less rare now. Everyone's dying from it.
Yeah.
Everyone's dying. It's an epidemic right now. It's worse than it's ever been.
I don't know if you got the Netflix there, but there's a fantastic documentary on Netflix called The Pharmacist. And it's all about how...
I watched a little of that.
How oxys took over. And then how it ended up being heroin was the next craze, and because they cracked down on it. I mean, it was just like...
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Well, and it's cheaper. I mean, I was doctor shopping. This is right before they started pulling DEA records. Yeah. And I had like 8 doctors. I was taking like 700 pills a month, and I went in and tried to get more, and the lady pulled my DEA record. And it's a federal offense.
Yeah.
My whole life could have been ruined.
Wow. Yeah.
It was already ruined anyway. I gave up. I was homeless. At one point, I lost my car, my condo, everything from that. And then she was like, do you need help?
Right.
And I said, yep, I do. And it was a struggle. I mean, I lost everything from where I was at this peak in the late 2000s. I was ranked second behind Cyborg. You know what I mean? I had everything. But I was miserable. I was very, very unhappy. And so that took a couple years. I lost everything. So in the last 5 years, it took me 2 years to even feel normal. To get, when you're doing that, a copious amount like that, it's not a joke when we say that's why so many people relapse, because it changes the DNA within your body. It changes the chemical makeup. It's pretty fucking terrifying.
Yeah. So these guys knew it too.
Short, the last 5 years has just been
the guys that sold it, the guys that developed it, the guys that were pushing it. They all knew it. They knew it was addictive.
Of course.
They still did it.
They still know there's no money in it. Yeah. There's no money in the cure, so you got to keep people fucked up.
Right.
But I'm proud of a lot of things I've done. I've accomplished a lot of pretty amazing things in my life, and I think.
Hey, how about you got to tell us the story about how you got on American Gladiators? Says Steele. I saw that on your Wikipedia page.
Yeah. So, like I said, I got a lot of opportunities. I was doing a lot of fitness modeling back then too, and I had a sports agent at the time, and they were interviewing for the first season, and they wanted a fighter. They wanted a female fighter on it. And when they told me the premise and some of the people who were going to be on it, fitness people, I went, "It's going to be stupid." I mean, my head was so big back then. It really was. I turned a lot of stuff down. I turned opportunities to go to WWE, the wrestling camps, in Kentucky and stuff, because they were you want to do wrestling? I'm like, no, I'm a fighter. I don't do that, right? I mean, such an idiot. But, so they did, you saw thousands of people did casting calls, and I'm like, hey, I'll do it, but tell me a little bit more. So my point being is I turned it down. They got Gina, and that's when Gina was, exploding around that time. Mm-hmm. They got her. They did the first season, and I was like, 8 Midger Crow. I'm like, oh man, this looks pretty cool. So they did the second season, and they specifically asked for me to come back, and it was a very laborious, long interview process, and you had to go do a gimmick in front of 20 of the people at NBC, and it was like a pro wrestling interview,
Yeah.
And I ended up doing it, and it was so awesome. It was one of the most amazing opportunities I've ever had. Yeah, what a great thing to be a part of that.
Oh yeah, I used to love the tennis ball shooter. That's the favorite.
Oh yeah,
favorite
We all
thing.
grew up on that. That was the greatest show.
Yeah. Well, the first run and the second run. That was still my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was
So fun, you know.
That was like
We had a blast.
a good time, unless you got hit by the tennis ball. It didn't look like a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, Tom hasn't
yeah.
piped in yet. He likes to give people's fortunes, so let's see what he has for your future outlook.
I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Let's hear it.
Okay, well, Erin, this has been such a pleasure hearing you. I mean, you have an amazing life, amazing story, and I just picture you giving that gratitude thought when you wake up in the morning. And wow, I'm still here in spite of all of it.
I do every day.
Yeah, I just can sense that. I mean, I imagine you're a very spiritual person. That sometimes it takes going through that, and you realize I'm still here for some reason. Maybe I'm not sure what it is. But by any sense of logic, you easily could not be here. And I mean, I don't know all of your story, but you've got me flashing back because I'm the old guy of the bunch, and I know when the UFC first came around, I was already your age and what you want now then, but I did train a lot, and I was training at Strong Style in Cleveland. It's the current home of our UFC heavyweight champion. Stipe. And back when we started, we were in a small karate studio, Tracy's Karate, and there was a guy, Bart Dale, shoot fighting. He had that, and our original trainer, Marcus Marnelli, who's Stipe's trainer now, he eventually broke from that, and we've seen the evolution of things. But I read about you in your interview in I think it was Grappling Magazine. If you recall giving that one. Yeah, I remember some of the.
I was the first woman to be on the cover of that magazine.
Right. In fact, I think I may still have that one. I mean, I still have in the closet. I still have these collections of stuff. But, I got rid of my comic books from the 1950s, and that was pretty stupid. But I still have a lot of.
Right.
But shows you my IQ. But I'm not going to make the same mistake. So I'll have to see if that one's still around. But yeah, you were on the cover, and that was a great interview, by the way. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
A lot of firsts in your life.
When that was.
Yeah. I'm thinking
or something.
Right, 2002-ish, 2003, right around then. And where I'm going with this is that back then, even though the sport was evolving and we had a lot to learn and the training was still kind of primitive, but there was a camaraderie then. And this is before the big business came into it. And I'm happy. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy for the direction that the sport's gone in, as far as MMA and getting on ESPN and the Fox deal. But before that, it just had this underground feeling of just wow, this is so exciting and just so revolutionary. And I remember when the King of the Cage first came back to Ohio, and we were there for the first one. And our guys won, and we went out and partied afterwards, and it was. And I know that it's changed a lot now, and changed for the better financially. But there's still that feel that and obviously I still have a hand in that world since I do the show and still talk to some fighters and still get up to watch it. Guys, I mean, I'm too old to be training now. So I always said when I can't give these guys a run for their money in the gym, it's time to accept reality. Accept reality. But you kind of miss. I mean, and I know because you really hit a nerve with me, like you were saying when you compared the two, like communities there. But you notice a difference. Did you notice how grassroots it was back when you started? And you kind of miss those days in some sense.
Yeah. I know what you mean because it's, we were fortunate enough to experience a time that can never be created again.
Right.
You know what I mean? It'll never exist again. I was fortunate enough to, fight in Japan many times. I got to go to a Pride in Japan, I think 2 of them, because my coach at the time was training Mark Kerr. I mean, I got to train with him.
Sweet.
I like Gerard Gordeau helped corner me one time. I had Boss Rutan and Mark Corner in one of my corners. Like,
wow,
yeah, man.
Wow.
People help each other, and in boxing, it's much more. It's not like that. You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah, well, and maybe it was the big money. It's always been in boxing. I mean, boxing gets so many great people, but then there's the element that just, like you said, sometimes you know you're going to have to knock someone out. You know, in MMA we can see a bit of that too now that we're seeing more money come into it. But
sure.
yeah, it was just so, and everyone was so accessible back then. I mean, it just seemed like, I don't know, it was just so easy to make connections, and it was a smaller world, and everyone seemed to know everyone, no matter where you trade at. I mean, across the country, it was like a fascinating network. And I guess those days are gone. And you know, who knows where the future is going? But how do you see the future of MMA since you've been around since the beginning? What do you think? Yeah, do you think the sport's kind of reached a peak of popularity, or do you think there's a lot of new directions? What do you think?
Well, I think boxing has kind of hit its peak. Like, they say boxing is dead. Boxing is not dead. It's still the fucking
no.
dead. But people just get again disillusioned. The one thing I talked to somebody about, which I thought was interesting, because we were saying, you know, there's fighters in boxing, like, you know, everybody knows Triple G and Canelo, and they're just those stars, you know. But what makes the other people, why do you know so many more fighters in MMA than you do in boxing? Even like T-Bud, you know, casuals don't know who the hell he is. Even Spence, you know what I mean? Like, unless you know boxing, like, people don't know who those guys are. But they even know, like, low-level fighters on UFC, because what they've been very brilliant about is marketing autonomously, marketing each individual. You know, and they do these stories on them, and they do it on everybody, as many people as they can cover. And boxing is not like that. They just pick, you know, to do the 24/7 or whatever. It's like they just pick a couple people that they focus on. Some people have enough charisma and all of that to supersede needing those type of interviews and the focus on them and in their house and blah, blah, blah. But I think there's just more, MMA is more diverse.
Right.
And it reaches more people over every demographic, every this, every that. And of course, because there's a lot of women in it. We are a huge part of this community. You know, women make up, I don't know, 2/3 of the people who just go train at these gyms. And they love seeing, I'm not a feminist by any means. Like, if you know me and you see the stuff that I write about, I'm not all about new wave feminism and, like, equal. Look, like, I work my ass off to get where I am, and I get paid more as a trainer than many guys. But my accolades and who I've trained under and all those things, they warrant that, you know. And I never asked for a handout because I'm a woman, or don't hit me as hard. I can tell you stories when I first started, like, especially going to the Mexican gyms. It was like machiste. They did not want a woman doing this. I've had the shit kicked out of me so many times. Like, much easier. They couldn't. The guys nowadays could not get away with what was happening to the women back then. They didn't have the sexual assaults and video and blah blah blah. We had to put up with, oh my God, a lot more. And again, just kind of jumping around. But like my dad always told me, honey, you can do anything you want. You're so smart. You're this. You're that. And I always believed that. I always took that with me, and I'm a very hard worker. But yeah, I think MMA is going to keep going. I don't know where that's going to top off, but Dana White is awesome. I'm a big fan of his, and he knows what the fuck he's doing, and he puts the fights on that people want to see. People fight. He makes people fight, which is why he wanted to get into boxing, and he wanted to start betting on, you know, he wanted to start, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, he wanted to do boxing, which he still has the intention of doing, and making people fight.
Yeah.
Talking to Al Heyman, PBC, like, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I do know my, because also I had a boyfriend who was my coach at one time. We knew each other for many, many years. He works personally for Al, and so I'd go to a lot of the fights in 2018 and 2019, and I got to really hear, you want to talk about inside information.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, man, like, you'd be like licking your chops. I'm like, oh, my God, that's like the highlights.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that whole thing got started. They kind of deceived the masters of the money to put all the money in to start it, and then they were banking on all these networks investing back into it, and first of all, it looked like it might be a scam, and then bam, it's a success. Like, I don't think I could have ever predicted that the way it started. I thought it was about to fall apart, and now they're talking about rejoining forces with the UFC.
Again, it's just because it's and we don't have a lot of women in boxing. You know what I mean? Who's the main bitch right now is like Clarissa Shields, who's like, and I'm cool with her too, but I mean, that's the role model.
Yeah, she's a little too arrogant for my taste, but I mean, she backs it up.
Say it again?
She's a little bit too arrogant for me, but she does back it up. So
I love that. I don't mind a little bit of I enjoy that because I like shit talking too. But I like, people need somebody that they can identify with across the board. And there's so many different races, so many different ages. Look, in MMA, it's like, you guys, you're still viable. You can have a career at my age. I could go back into MMA right now, and I'm not considered old. And even though I look way younger and I can still whoop the shit out of people who are, 15 years younger than me, it's like, it's a different game. And it's, the head trauma and all of that. It's like, I'll fight one more time. I'm not doing B-side anymore. I would never do it again. I've been in the sport too long. But if I got a world title opportunity, I would take it. But with MMA, yes, I have the opportunity to make more money. But again, it's like, it just, you hit every demographic, every type of person that you can. It's just way more diverse than boxing.
Awesome.
And that's why people love it.
Before we let you go, do you have any final thoughts, number one? And number two, how do people find you out there on the internet?
Absolutely. So I have a Facebook, but it's just, I think that thing's full. It's like just a basic one. But you can find me at Erin on my Instagram. It's Erin, ERIN Fight, FIGHTS. Sometimes when I do interviews, because I've actually gotten some, business through this way, I train people. Again, I'm a boxing coach. I primarily train women, but I've had a lot of fighters. I used to train Rob McCullough. You guys know him. I was his boxing coach. Cool. I've trained a lot of men, and I'll take a couple fighters on if that's viable for me. But really, if you're in the area, I'm in Orange County, California. Yeah. So, if anyone's in this area and they want to train, if not, you can kind of follow what I do online. And obviously, I'm very passionate about my sport, but I'm also very passionate about animal rights. I'm an animal activist. I'm a vegan. And really, to be honest, going back to what we were talking about, like my purpose here is fighting was great, but when I lost my identity, I didn't know who the fuck I was. I struggled for a long time because that was my identity. And then when I realized, yes, I'm here for another purpose, and service is one of those things I found,
right,
which is why I'm a fulfilled, happy person. I used to be very selfish and take, and I find much more fulfillment in giving back.
Oh, yeah. Well, I believe that, too.
And I really want to, touch on that for people out there. Yeah. And
it's important.
We all have a story, and, I hope just sharing it, I can maybe inspire somebody, or if somebody's going through a drug problem right now, because everyone either is on it or they know somebody that it touches everyone. You can get help and you can get through this too. You can contact me, and maybe I can send you in the right direction, because I have a lot of contacts for that industry too. And I don't know, and we'll see what happens with my fighting. I'm very in the moment, you know. I've done a lot again in my career. If it's the right thing, I'll take it. If not, my life is just starting again. I'm in an amazing chapter, and
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, keep your hands up and keep punching.
Thank you.
We will definitely be following you.
Bob and weave that shit.
Yeah, we'll follow you, and we'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll have to do a round 2 at some point, and have you back on the show at some point.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to, you know, I always appreciate that, to share my story. So,
great.
Yeah, man.
I will
and I have to say, Erin, my crystal ball now is lighting up. This getting bright. Okay, all good energy. Right. All good energy. Yes, indeed. I think it's no coincidence that you're where you need to be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, thank you guys. I really appreciate what you do too, and your passion for the sport.
You're welcome.
You know, so.
Great chatting with you, and it's an awesome story.
Okay,
we'll talk soon.
Have a good night, guys.
You too. All right, so there you have it. There's Erin Toughill. And that's about it for us. We don't really have any other topics unless you guys have something to add. And the other story I had to talk about was Dana White talking about sports resuming, but nothing really.
And you know, I ask you, because you know a little bit more, you know, than I do on this. With the UFC card this weekend, I meant to ask you this earlier. They're doing it in Jacksonville, Florida, and are they using Jacksonville as a location because of the Florida governor deeming things like that essential business? That's what the WWE's been doing, using their performance center down in Orlando to, you know, run shows. So, I was wondering if that's why you think they're using Jacksonville, and if it's going to be the same thing with the no audience crowd.
Well, it says here, the upcoming UFC events will have no fans and staffing levels more than 50% below normal. And Dana White also said, health and safety isn't something that just popped up with the coronavirus with us. It's something we think about every weekend. But they are going to have testing and all that, so, you know. Like the Nicaragua thing we talked about last week. You don't really need sophisticated testing. All you really need is a handheld thermometer that you can shoot across the room and not even have to be close to the person to test their temperature.
Yeah. You know, it was funny.
People are doing well with that.
It was funny. It was like, you know, I've been working from home, and every hour, like I said, I get up and I do my, 10 push-ups and my, 30 crunches and leg lifts and all that. So, I've been doing that, and then I go walk about 3 miles at once every day. So last night I was, Tuesday night I was working out downstairs in the basement, and it was one of those that I just didn't, I didn't feel like myself, and we were having a problem with the one heater down there, and I'm like, oh, maybe I just didn't, I didn't get warmed up like I wanted to. And then tonight I was going to, work out, and I was like, man, I have a little bit of a headache. And I'm like, back in the day, you easily say, man, I just don't feel too good. You don't want to say that now, You're like, shit, you'd be quarantined. But, no, I am more than fine. I did my 20 rounds tonight. I've been averaging 25,000 steps a day. And, Rich, I don't know if you saw it. I'll have to send it to Tom. But my dad wanted to do a workout video with me this past Saturday because it was his 72nd birthday, and he wanted to do a round on the pads with me. And he has, and it's funny because, my dad kept asking me, hey, we got to do a round, on the pads, for my birthday, and, we got a video, it. And I'm like, and I know why. See, my dad had a disagreement with, a guy that lived a few miles away, and they would always go to, like, this green park, and they're only a week in age difference. This guy's a week older than my dad, but he's, very unhealthy, very out of shape, can barely walk, and he's a loudmouth, and he causes a lot of trouble. So, and he's still on my Facebook friends list. My dad's like, I want to post a video so this fat, disgusting, loudmouth, out of shape slob can see me doing things that he can't think of doing. So, of course,
I met your dad, and I can picture him. I can just see that.
All right, guys. Well, on that note, we're going to call it a night.
All
Thanks
right.
for stopping by, and it's a good
Grand interview.
And we'll try to get somebody
Remember
else
what I
next
said.
week.
Watch that co-main event, Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, hopefully.
You heard it here. Okay, guys.
It's going to be interesting to actually watch fights again, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Right. Tony might actually have to watch a MMA fight for once.